And we're live. It's time for the RotoWire Rundown. My name is Keith Stewart from Read the Line, and you know my counterpart in crime, Mr. Len Hochberg, senior golf writer over there at RotoWire. Well, Len, once again, we're coming off another regular PGA Tour event winner for 2024. Peter Malnati started the week at 400 to 1, and he fits the mold for the 2024 season. This is a tremendous story. I saw your social media posts over the weekend. You love his reaction. You love, his persistence, his family, his all of it. All of it there with Kira K. Dixon was on full display. But in reality, is this good for the PGA Tour?
I think so. I mean, he isn't just a little guy who won. He's a little guy with a lot to say and a lot of important things to say. I've been following Peter Malnati. I remember when he won the Sanderson in 2015, and he held up the chicken, or I don't know if it's a chicken or a hen or whatever, but I don't know which came first. But so I've been watching him a long time, and I know he's on the policy board, and he's there to represent the little guy, and he takes it seriously, and he does a good job doing that, and he pushes back to some big names. So it's good for the PGA Tour because it's good for the little guy. And again, he just put such a positive spin on winning. He just didn't win and collect his check and go home. Okay, we like the underdog. He had some really important things to say, and he said it very eloquently. And you're right, I was all over it.
I'm with you. I think it's a good thing for the tour because now all of a sudden there's a man in that room that was speaking on behalf of, let's say, the little guy with a little voice in the room. And now he's the most recent winner. And if you look at some of the other guys in that room, Jordan missed the cut. Cantley hasn't won in over a year. I mean, Peter Malnati could say like, hey, here's my opinion on this. And they have to give him a little more respect. And I think there's also something to be said for the fact that, like, if you're sitting in a room with Tiger Woods and those other champions, and the tour trusts you to sit down and learn what Yasser has to say and all of those things, I think that's kind of empowered Peter Malnati a little bit, and I don't know how you feel about that, but like, I think at the end of the day, hanging out with those guys, it's not only like elevated his, maybe his self-confidence, but it's kind of elevated his game at the same time. And speaking of elevated games, I mean, we're not going to get any higher. I mean, will we get any higher? We talk about it every week. Like, are we going to get higher than 13,000 for Scottie Scheffler and DFS? Or he started the week at plus 300. So a 3-1 betting odds in order to win the whole tournament. And now he's dropped. I mean, some of the boards like FanDuel have him already all the way down to plus 260, which means people are taking action on this. Is Scottie Scheffler? I mean, Tiger Woods? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I didn't know 260. I saw it down to 275 last night. But I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. He's 13,000. He's plus 260, and those prices are warranted. And I know that the DFS and betting is a little bit different. And if you pick them in DFS, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would pick them in betting. But in 13,000, especially with so many guys down in the 5,000s now, and on the DraftKings metric system, whatever they're doing over there, I could definitely see it. He's one of my picks. If you think a guy is going to win the tournament, does it really matter what the odds are? If you think he's going to win, I would say play him.
I mean, those people know what they're doing, Len. And you said it, and I'm just going to, maybe at the risk of being redundant, they put him at plus 300 and the odds are going down. So people are taking him. It's warranted. They put him at 13,000 and his ownership will be what? 35%? In DFS, I mean, he'll be the highest owned player by a very wide margin. So I guess until something changes, it's just maybe we just play the markets that are there without Scottie. And I can't do that in DFS, but you can in betting. And we're talking this week about the Texas Children's Houston Open, and it's had a couple different names and it's had a couple different spots on the calendar. But this most recent venue, Memorial Park Golf Course, is fantastic. Difficult golf course, public golf course right there in the heart of Houston. It was in November for the first 3 editions that we had here, 2020, 21, 22. It wasn't there in the fall because they moved it to the spring. As you're building out your lineups, do you feel that there's a big change going from November to March when it comes to DFS strategy, or are birdie streaks still birdie streaks?
I think there's definitely a change in any sort of strategy, that what golf betting, picking, whatever. We saw that the Players Championship moved just 2 months from May to March, and there were significant changes in how that golf course played and what we saw happening there, and scores changed. This is a 4-month change, and we know they changed all the grasses from 16 months ago when we last saw it. And really, they went from Bermuda grass to Poa trivialis overseed on the greens. Really, Keith, you are much more equipped to discuss this than I am. Please explain to everybody what all that means.
Well, when Tom Doak came in, and everyone will talk about how Koepka was a consultant for him and everything, and the renovation of this golf course in 2019, a big part of what they were trying to do was to make it play more Texas style, more firm and fast. The golf course had gotten kind of soft, and when they pulled out a bunch of bunkers and they created these runoffs and everything, and they kind of made the fairways, and they brought that little it almost is like a barranca at times, but like the creek into play more. The intention there was to get the ball bouncing. And the November editions, it just hasn't happened. And with the agronomy of Bermuda grass, that sticky kind of like very southern, almost weed that you get either in the rough or around the greens. You see when guys are into the grain, they're almost always like putting instead of chipping. And then on the grass, or on the greens, the grass with all of the grain always tends to befuddle guys or whatever. So you move it to March, and you do a rye overseed in the rough and the collars and the fairways and everything. And then you do this Poa trivialis overseed on the greens. And that's the putting surface we just used at the Players. And we've also used at Valspar last week, and we see it at TPC Scottsdale and a couple other places. Very, very smooth, very, very firm. So now all of a sudden, if we get the conditions that these guys want, and it seems like they're going to do it, they're going to firm this place up, and then fairways get tougher to hit. And it's a tough place because you got to pull out driver. The greens get tougher to hit because we know the approaches are, a third of them come from over 200 yards. It gets tougher to putt. It gets tougher to chip. And it makes this test where the average score over those 3 editions is just 13 under par that much better. And that much better of preparation for Augusta National, because that's coming right around the corner. And, we talk about Scottie. He's the favorite there. When we get into the DFS names today, do you take Scottie at the top of the board, or do you risk going with another name in that 10K range?
Well, Scottie's not in the 10K range. He's not in the 11K range. He's not in the 12K range. He's in the 13K range. We have not seen that price. I remember years ago, I don't know how far back it was, we did see that price on occasion. The pricing is completely revamped through the years, and I'm not even just talking about the last few weeks or months when they've gone into the 5,000s and stuff. So we've seen that before, but there were guys in the 12s alongside him. There's no one within shouting distance of Scottie Scheffler. Wyndham Clark is at 10,009. So I do have Scottie Scheffler in my article, which is on RotoWire now, free article. I do have Wyndham Clark in my article as well as 2 guys to pick. Heck, the way the pricing is now, you could pick both of those guys and still, have 4 guys. You've got to average about $6,500 the rest of the way. But there are more than 100 guys in the 6s and 5s now. It is crazy. There's not a lot of 8s, not a lot of 7s, not a lot of 9s. So you can do something like that. So I think this whole pricing setup is more of a reason to pick Scottie Scheffler. Let you take him, more opportunity to take him. So yeah, I am with Scottie Scheffler here. And also, oh yeah, he's playing pretty well too. That's another reason.
Everyone keeps talking about Scottie and how well he's playing. I just want certain people to pump the brakes when it comes to these comparisons with Tiger Woods. Everyone's talking, oh, he was 3-1 to start this tournament. No one's done that in a while. Rahm last year was about 4-1 going into Mexico after 4 wins and you won a green jacket. So we've been in this realm before. But I mean, if you want to talk about odds to win a tournament, go back to 2007, 2008 where Tiger, he closes out 2007. His last 6 tournaments, he wins 5 of them, and he comes in runner-up in the other one, right? Is that any good? Well, he starts with the Buick Invitational in 2008, which is now what we call the Farmers Insurance Open, or what was always the start of his season at Torrey Pines. Tiger was even money to win that tournament. Even money.
Unreal.
Right? At Bay Hill that year, he was minus 110 to win the tournament. He went into the Masters. I think he was 2-1 or like plus 130. He was 2-1 going into the U.S. Open. He won it with a broken leg. So when it comes to Scottie, he's great and everything. I know he's won 2 in a row, but I mean, Tiger went 12 straight there, finished them all in the top 5 and won 9 of them. So just everybody chill out. Speaking of 9s, let's get in the 9K range. I've talked enough. Who's the 9s you're featuring this week?
Yeah, I do have 2 guys in the 9s. And one other guy I want to mention is in the 10s is Thakala. He is now a Texan. I think he's relocated to Texas. I think he lives in Texas now, so local guy. But this is a good golf course for him. You've got to hit it far, but the fairways are wide. One of his big issues is fairway accuracy, but a little bit less of a concern this week. So it's really, you can really let fly off the tee. Tony Finau at 99. Yeah, his putting is a real issue. But, he has not been great this year. I think he's down to 30th in the world. All of a sudden just creeps up on us. But he did have a 6th at Torrey Pines, which I don't know. It's not an exact comparison, but it's long, hard golf course. And this is a significantly weaker field. Alex Noren at 9,400, highly priced this week. But deservedly so. He was 4th back in 2022 at this tournament. He's still trying to get into the Masters. He has a lot to play for. He's played well this year. There's only 2 guys in the 9s, Finau and Noren. Like I said, it's pretty skimpy up here.
Well, then we'll jump down to the 8s, which is an interesting group because there's a guy like Doug Gim last week that I loved, and he kind of didn't show up at the Valspar. So when we get in the 8s land, we want to, if we're going to spend the 8K, we want to make sure we get some value here. We get 4 rounds out of these guys. Who do you like?
Yeah, there's 3 guys in the 8,000s and nothing in the upper half of the 8,000s. Billy Horschel, showing signs of life. He was 9th last week, and then he had a recent top 12 as well. He does, when he's playing well, he does everything pretty well. He doesn't really excel anywhere. He doesn't have a huge weakness. He's still back in the 80s in the world rankings. He's going to have a hard time getting into the Masters. He probably needs a win or maybe a runner-up to do that. But I do like him this week. Kurt Kitayama, another guy who will benefit from the wider fairways, hits the ball a ton, very aggressive player. And Jake Knapp also hits the ball a ton at 8,000. Those are my 3 in the 8s.
Well, then it's time for the 7s. You said it before. There's 8,000 guys down there in the 6K and 5K range, right? Is there anybody in the 7s that catch your eye?
Yeah, there's over 100 guys in the 5s and 6s. It's just crazy out there now that to do that. I'm picking 3 guys in the 7s, and the 7s is really my dead spot. I'm not wholeheartedly in on any of these guys, but I have to sort of give some in all price ranges. Mackenzie Hughes, 7,800. He's played well here before. You wouldn't think this would be his type of golf course, but you wouldn't have really thought the Valspar would have been his. I wouldn't have thought the Valspar would have been his type of golf course. He had the lead on Sunday, sort of kicked it away, but he ended up 3rd. That was his best showing of the year. Maybe he's turning things around. Akshay Bhatia, oh my gosh, he's played 8 tournaments this year, 4 missed cuts, 4 top 20s. Boop. Which one are you going to get this week? I don't know. But you've got a 50-50 shot, maybe sort of a top 20 with Bhatia. We'll see. And Joel Damon, who doesn't love Joel Damon? Great ball striker, great iron player. I think he's going to have trouble on the greens. He's going to have trouble around the greens. But at 7,100, I think he could make his way to the weekend in a weaker field and perhaps do a little bit of damage. And he will have everybody rooting for him, as he seems to be everywhere he goes now.
Well, I tell you, there were times in Full Swing too, if you've seen that maybe Gino Bonelli, his caddy, didn't like Joel Damon, but no, they're very good friends. I'm just joking there because they've become superstars through all sorts of mediums. And Joel's had back-to-back top tens here, so that's fantastic play on a very difficult golf course. Let's go down to the sixes. You said there's a lot of people down here. Then we got to narrow it down. If we're going to take guys like Wyndham and Scottie, we need to find some sixes that work.
Andrew Novak, $6,900, really a breakthrough season for him. He's playing very well. I saw indications of it last year where I just saw little pieces. He didn't really put it together, but there was something there that told me that, he had the stuff to maybe be good. And it didn't quite happen last year. It seems to be happening this year. Joseph Bramlett, 6,600, hits the ball a ton. One thing I liked about Bramlett when I was doing my research, and one thing to consider this week for me, is bogey avoidance. When your winning score is about 10, 12, something like that, you gotta watch what you're doing out there. So he hits the ball a ton, but he does avoid bogeys, among the best in this field. Chris Gotterup, 6,100, maybe the second or third longest hitter, right behind Cameron Champ in the whole field. Dylan Wu last year, pretty good start to the year. Then the middle of the year, the end of the year, faded away, completely gone. We didn't hear from him again. Beginning of this year, playing pretty well. So maybe there's something about the courses and just the whatever about the beginning of the year, but this seems to be Dylan Wu's time of year. Two guys in the 5,000s, not for the faint of heart. Eric Barnes, 5,900. Tyson Alexander, who was the runner-up here, 2 years ago, he's all the way down at $5,300. But there are other things I like, and I expand on that in my article on RotoWire.
Hey, if you're going to go with Scottie or one of those guys at the top of the board, this 5K range, it pays to do your homework, or just quite simply go read Len's article. It's free. It's from RotoWire, and it's right up there on the internet. And, there are a lot of times where you pique my interest in certain things that you say, or even the people that you say. When I start to dig into my own DFS research, I'm like, man, that was a really great point by Len. And there's so many times that these names do pop because you have been following them, because that's your job to do it. And you're tremendous at it. Now, speaking of being tremendous, right? You talked about his move to Texas, but Sahith Theegala has been great lately, right? He was 6th at API. He was 9th at the Players. And everyone's talking about the fact that he's found a way, hitting this little bleeder cut, to put the ball in the fairway. And in doing so, it's helped improve his approach play. And we already know that he's world-class when it comes to around the green play and putting the ball. I mean, the last 3 winners here have averaged over 7 strokes as a gain against the field with their flat stick. So putting is really a key here. I mean, that's almost twice as much as they were gaining on approach against the field. Those 3 winners, who is Carlos Ortiz, Jason Kokrak, and Tony Finau, the 3 guys that have won at Memorial Park. So I love the fact that Theegala has the weapons on the green and that he's been hitting the ball good lately. He's also, he's not the highest ball hitter, and we're going to see some wind this weekend, Friday through Sunday. Looks like the wind is going to approach the 20s with gusts over that. So the fact that Theegala is a low ball hitter, I do kind of like that. People forget this guy was the college player of the year at Pepperdine. So, I mean, it takes a little while. It took Scottie 70-plus events to figure out what he was doing. He just started winning all of them. Theegala was great at the Fortinet. He won there. He's had a good month or so. So I love him. And then Kashmir Keith Mitchell, or Killer Keith, whatever nickname you want to go by. Last week at the Valspar, I didn't know if that was a good fit for him. He's so good with the driver, and that's not necessarily a driver-heavy golf course. He started the week at 40-1. Well, he was second in tee to green for the people that made the cut. I mean, he was fantastic striking the golf ball. Yes, he faded on Sunday, but guess what? It's tough to sleep on a lead on the PGA Tour. That conversion rate is down like in the 25 percentile. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if I know that this week he's coming back at 40-1, I thought his number would be down in the low 30s for this week, because this is a driver-heavy golf course. Now I get Kashmir Keith again at over 40-1, and basically I saw him play great last week, and
Yeah.
now we're on a golf course that's maybe a better fit. So from a betting perspective, those are my early leans this week and the guys that certainly I'm going to be writing about over there at Read the Line. And you know what? If you want, you can go check that out. Of course, you could always check Len out at RotoWire. It's another busy week here on the PGA Tour. The guys take center stage. Unbelievable prep here this week for Augusta National. Now, I know I'm sure you've already started doing your research for Magnolia Lane, Len. Is there anybody there that kind of catches your eye? Just give me one name. Doesn't have to be a pick to win, or just somebody who in your early research you were like, wow, I forgot how good this guy is at Augusta.
I don't know if I've gotten that far into my research yet. I'm still trying to make sure I have 86 guys in the tournament to try and name all 86 guys. I always leave one out. Who am I missing? Stuff like that. It's really maddening. But I'm just really interested to see what Joaquin Niemann will do at the Masters. He's played well there before. We know how well he's playing in Live and beyond. So far that, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on him. And, I know the Live guys are rooting for the Live guys, and they've got Koepka and they've got Reed and they've got Mickelson, but Niemann might be the one to really keep an eye on. And so I'm very interested. Picked him up in one of my fantasy leagues. I did. Mr. Anti-Live me picked him up, but good golf is good golf. So I'm looking at him. I don't know. Is there anybody you are keeping an eye on?
Well, interestingly enough, you failed to mention one name there, Rahm, the defending champion. I am very, very interested because it seems like Jon Rahm is chomping at the bit to get to Augusta, right? It doesn't seem like the DJ music and shorts are really doing it for him on Live, right? He's already talked about a couple times saying, like I missed some of these events that I could have defended at this year. I mean, like, who wouldn't want to defend at Riviera, right? And now we're coming to the first major of the year, the most popular major of the year. And this guy has got to be, because he already runs hot. He has got to be super, super anxious to get there. So that's the one I'm looking most forward to. But you know what? We've got another week in between. So next week's the Valero Texas Open. It's been a mainstay leading up to Augusta National. So Len, you and I will be back next week at 11:15, of course, on the rundown. You at 8:15 there with the coffee out there on the left coast. Everyone, thanks for joining us. See you next week.